Today on Notsam Wrestling, a huge amount of talent released from the WWE main roster. What to make of the WWE's new TV deal? AEW forced to switch a championship? And is it time to break rule number 3? This is Notsam Wrestling. Welcome to Notsam Wrestling. Notsam Wrestling has become beyond a podcast. It is a wrestling content powerhouse. Of course, 2 big podcasts last week. Not only did we do 465, where we chronicled everything going down in the world of professional wrestling, including The Rock's comeback, but on Wednesday or Thursday, we dropped a bonus podcast, an additional podcast, where I gave my thoughts on the merger between WWE and UFC, forming TKO Holdings, but not really from a business perspective and you know, numbers and what's this all going to mean. This isn't CNBC. This is a wrestling podcast. Instead of feigning expertise in another topic, I decided to go in on the wrestling history of it all and why it's all so significant. I was pretty proud of the way that podcast came out. I would absolutely check it out over on the Notsam Wrestling YouTube channel if you get the opportunity. This week, we will also have a second podcast later in the week, a conversation with AEW's The Butcher, Andy Williams, formerly from Every Time I Die, in the Notsam studio. That is coming up later this week. But right now, too much to talk about to spend another moment giving anything but it any credence, because the question has come up. And we all knew it would happen eventually, whether for the good or the bad. Is it time to abandon rule number 3? Everybody knows the rules of Notsam Wrestling. Number 1, and the most important by a mile, watch the product. Number 2, speculate wildly. And number 3, we don't fantasy book Randy Orton. Now, this week, within the last week, I should say, rules number 1 and 2 have interfered greatly with rule number 3. See, watch the product doesn't just refer to listen to the podcast, watch the podcast. It doesn't just refer to, watch wrestling on television. Watch the product just means stay aware of what is going on in this world so we can all come together from an informed point of view. And if you are keeping tabs on everything, if you are watching the greater product as it was, you would know that on Tuesday, Randy Orton was spotted outside the WWE Performance Center. So in watching the product, we find out that Randy is outside the WWE Performance Center, which leads us to do what? Rule number 2, speculate wildly. But as we speculate wildly from watching the product of seeing Randy Orton, we're then led to booking Randy Orton, which is against rule number 3 completely, which is don't fantasy book Randy Orton. But look, Randy Orton was spotted outside of the Performance Center on Tuesday. And there's no sort of, it's not a report. It's not somebody said he was there. Because if it was just a matter of people have said he was there, then it's like, no, we cannot do this. Videotaped evidence. This is like the Zapruder film. Videotaped evidence of Randy Orton outside of the Performance Center, waving to the camera, and I believe making a shh gesture to it. Which, the shush gesture, which was probably Randy's way of saying, hey, be cool, this isn't supposed to be like a thing, has led people to believe, oh, this must be a huge secret that he's keeping. I'll bet he's going to be on Raw on Monday, which is not the energy that we're looking for when we see Randy Orton outside there. I mean, he's been out for 16 months with so many false flags, so many fake reports, so many times that we've gotten our hopes up because the rumor mill starts spinning. When in reality, there was nothing for the rumor mill to be spinning about. There have been so many pay-per-views where people are like, Randy Orton is scheduled to return. And it's like been a year of this, and it never happens. That's what led me to the point of being like, look, fantasy booking Randy Orton returning is like when people were reporting that the WWE had been sold before it was sold. It's like when people are reporting that this contract is up or this TV deal is up. It's all based on nothing. And somehow it gets said enough in a short amount of time that people just go, oh, this is true. And it's not true. And I think that it's bad. It's bad. It's a bad thing. It's bad for wrestling. But then he's outside the Performance Center. He's right there. He's waving to the camera. What else would he be doing in the Performance Center? Now, look, there is this possibility where Randy, I think he lives in like St. Louis or something. Maybe he moved to Orlando. I don't know where he lives, okay? I'm not a stalker. Maybe he has relocated. Maybe he lives in Florida. Maybe he doesn't have a ring. Somehow Natty has a ring, and Edge has a ring, and Undertaker has a ring, and all these people, but Randy doesn't have a ring. Maybe Randy didn't want a ring. Maybe he doesn't like to bring his work home. He likes to leave his work at work, so he doesn't have a ring. And so maybe he just wanted to work out and see how he was feeling. So he was just using the rings at the Performance Center. The more I put it out like that, the more it doesn't make sense. But it's possible. All I'm saying is it's possible. We don't have direct evidence that it's time to start fantasy booking Randy Orton. But man, I cannot imagine what the reaction is going to be like if he were to return. If Randy Orton were to return, I've got to believe, especially if it was a surprise. Two ways, right? Either as a surprise or like incredible video packages announcing that he was coming back. Because to me, my favorite comeback ever in terms of crowd reaction and the way it was handled and everything was Triple H returning from quad surgery in, I want to say, 2002. When he came back at Madison Square Garden. I've said this before. I was there in the Garden. It was the loudest reaction I've ever heard in that building. And it was all the build up to it, right? Triple H left as a hated heel, part of the two-man power trip. But it was all those vignettes. It was watching him heal. It was finding out that he had suffered the injury during a match and he had finished the match. It was the song Beautiful Day playing as Triple H inched closer and closer to a return. And then finally the date was announced. And Triple H came back at the end of that episode of Raw. And he just had a microphone to announce he was going to the Rumble. And it was still just the biggest thing ever. Randy's been gone for longer, and his injury was less specific than Triple H's was. So I think it's a little bit different, but still, I think, surprise or not, when Randy Orton steps back in the ring, if I'm doing it again, I'm fantasy booking, it's difficult, man. It's difficult, and I worry that the more I do it, the more I'm going to get emails about it, and I'm going to get frustrated again. But if Randy were to step back into the ring, yeah, it would be the reaction of the century. So do we just have to do it? We saw him. We're talking about it now, right? Look, I will say this. Timing-wise, ain't no way. Theoretically, right, the way things have been set up, you've got Fastlane in October. Randy's not back for Fastlane. Then you've got Crown Jewel. And when Randy comes back, I guess you could bring him back. Like when Roman Reigns returned because he was in remission. I'm in remission, y'all. That was another amazing return. But when he returned after being gone and he came back to WrestleMania, he wasn't in the top of the scene, right? Because Seth was having his moment. So they just kind of had built up Drew as a monster heel and had Roman in the middle of the card face Drew McIntyre. I feel like if Randy were to come back, it would be for one last huge run. Randy's not a young guy. Randy doesn't have 15 years left of wrestling, and I don't think he wants to wrestle for another 15 years. But I do think that he's got another main event run in him. That said, there ain't no way that guy is a villain when he returns. And if you try to make him a villain, it will be miscast. Seth Rollins, when he went out with an injury at the height of his heeldom and he returned, he was hideously miscast as a villain. He came back and Roman was the baby face and Seth Rollins was the villain, and it was bad for Roman, it was bad for Seth. It made no sense. Everybody was so happy to see Seth Rollins back. That's the way it's going to feel for Randy Orton. There's no way he should come back as a villain. If he even is going to come back. We're not fantasy booking. But if he were to come back, he would have to come back as a hero, I would think. So unless Seth is going to lose the title. Now, look. I guess Seth could lose the title to Shinsuke. And then Randy could come back to face Shinsuke. But I don't know. I think that if Shinsuke is just kind of finding his way back to that main event spot and Randy returns to face Shinsuke Nakamura, nobody has any stomach in that scenario for seeing Shinsuke Nakamura beat Randy Orton. So did you really build up Shinsuke back to the main event scene so that Randy Orton could come back and immediately take the title off of him? Maybe. I don't know that it would be the worst thing in the world to trade around the world heavyweight title a whole bunch. In a world where you've had Roman Reigns be the undisputed WWE Universal Champion for well over 1,000 days at this point. You've had Gunther setting the world record for the Intercontinental Championship, or the Intercontinental record, I should say. You've got women's champions that are all of your champions, it feels like, are fairly stable. And I think part of giving life to the World Heavyweight Championship would be to give it a history of champions and to give it a roster of superstars who specifically want that title. And one of the reasons you would want that title is because it was taken from you. I wouldn't be against having like 3, maybe even 4 different champions within the next 365 days. I think it would be a good thing for all parties involved if you did that. And maybe that means bring Randy back, have Shinsuke beat Seth. Randy comes back and beats Shinsuke. Randy is the World Heavyweight Champion on Raw. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. And maybe you've got a road for Cody to enter the picture. I don't know. Because speaking of Cody, I think that the natural place to go, and it becomes a matter of timing, is that Randy Orton has never been an opponent of Roman Reigns. Randy Orton was always the guy that it's like, okay, who's left that Roman hasn't beaten? Who's left that this version of Roman Reigns hasn't put into rubble? Randy Orton is one of those guys that was left. The idea, and that's where timing comes into play, right? Because I think that AJ Styles is clearly in line to have the Roman Reigns match at Crown Jewel. I have said for a long time that in terms of Survivor Series, I think there's a way to do Survivor Series where you've got Roman having a singles match and War Games existing involving Solo, Jimmy, and Jay without Roman. So you could have Roman defend the title again at Survivor Series. There is no December pay-per-view. Roman is not on the Royal Rumble poster this year. So theoretically, we could get if we get a title defense at Survivor Series, it might be the last one before Elimination Chamber and then WrestleMania. Believe it or not, we're already there. I think that the AJ Styles thing is a good thing to do right now because AJ is another guy that this version of Roman has not had to compete with. I think, and this is not fantasy booking because that's against the rules, but I do think if Randy can start bumping around and stuff like that, I think bringing Randy back after Survivor Series, I mean, you could give Randy a very similar comeback to 2002 Triple H. Like, but without the vignettes. And this is not fantasy booking. But I'd probably do have Randy come out at the end of an episode of Raw and lay somebody out, maybe as a surprise, or maybe at a pay-per-view. At the end of a pay-per-view, maybe at the end of Survivor Series, Randy lays somebody out. Maybe Randy lays out Roman Reigns at the end of Survivor Series. And it wouldn't be the first time we've had a spectacular end to Survivor Series. You remember Survivor Series before WrestleMania 31. Yeah, WrestleMania Push Play. So that would have been 2014, probably Survivor Series 2014, maybe 2014, 2015, when Sting made his surprise debut in the WWE and confronted Triple H at the end of the show. You could have Randy drop Roman Reigns at the end of Survivor Series. Maybe Roman Reigns has his match with AJ Styles at Crown Jewel. Maybe he does a rematch with AJ at Survivor Series. He beats AJ once and for all. Maybe it goes War Games and then the AJ match, and something happens between all those where the bloodline starts to come back together. And then Randy comes in immediately and RKO's Solo, RKO's Jimmy and Jay. Maybe he gets Roman, maybe he doesn't. Maybe RKO's everybody except Roman. Maybe RKO's Paul Heyman. Who knows? But Randy Orton makes a surprise appearance at the very end of Survivor Series. And then Monday on Raw, you turn it on, and Randy Orton comes out to announce that he ain't 100%, but he will be in the Royal Rumble. And you don't have a Randy Orton match, and we're not fantasy booking, but you don't have a Randy Orton match until Royal Rumble, right? You have the physicality at Survivor Series, and then nothing. Randy comes out for a promo, and you can have Randy do promos here and there because you got 6 weeks between then and Royal Rumble, right? But in terms of putting trunks on and going to the ring and wrestling, the Royal Rumble match is Randy's return. Now, the reason why I think this is strong is because now you're bringing the main event to WrestleMania 31 into a lot of question. I'm not 31, 40. I was thinking of 31 because of WrestleMania Push Play that I just cited. WrestleMania 40 into a lot of question. We've already made things very interesting, right? Up until, I would say, 2 weeks ago, most of us said, yeah, Roman versus Cody is the main event of WrestleMania 40. And we've pretty much believed that since, I don't know, the night after WrestleMania. We started saying right after WrestleMania, it was, is Cody going to be able to stay over all the way until WrestleMania? Because for some reason, we can't have Cody finishing the story anytime other than WrestleMania. It has to be at WrestleMania. So we started talking about Cody going all the way to WrestleMania 40. And then as it got closer, as the months went on, I think we've all come to terms with the fact that, yeah, Cody will still be over at WrestleMania 40. And Roman versus Cody will still have every bit of juice going into 40 that he had going into 39, except now The Rock throws a monkey wrench into that. When The Rock returns, that's when, and that becomes the conversation. Well, who's going to WrestleMania then? I thought it was going to be Cody. What if Randy Orton announces that he's going to be in the Royal Rumble and that's going to be his return, and we just saw him lay out Roman Reigns at Survivor Series? Now, going into the Royal Rumble, you've got Cody, you've got Randy, and you've got this idea that it could be The Rock as well. You're sitting there going, maybe The Rock will be a surprise entrant in the Rumble. Maybe The Rock won't even enter the Rumble, but he'll still get the main event match with Roman Reigns at WrestleMania because he's The Rock. Maybe neither Randy or Cody will win the Royal Rumble. Somebody else will win the Royal Rumble and challenge Seth Rollins. You know, now we're entering into a Royal Rumble, which is the polar opposite. Last year, everybody bought a ticket to the Royal Rumble. Everybody turned their Peacock streaming service on, knowing Cody Rhodes is winning the Royal Rumble so he can go to WrestleMania and challenge Roman Reigns. Which is fine, by the way. It's not always, they say that you don't always have to surprise people in professional wrestling. Sometimes if everybody wants something to happen and they're buying a ticket to see that thing happen, it's okay if that's the thing that happens and everybody leaves happy. WrestleMania night 1, everybody was showing up to see Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn win the tag team championship. They won the tag team championship. Everybody left happy. And then night 2, you give them something they didn't quite expect, and they don't leave happy at all. But sometimes it's okay. Last year's Royal Rumble was perfect because everybody got what they wanted with the Cody Rhodes thing, and then there was a spectacular angle with the Bloodline and Sami finally turning on Roman to close the show. So if you go into the Royal Rumble now, it could be fine if it's just a given that Cody's going to win. I think people would still be okay with it. That's the WWE that we're living in right now. People are down for the story. People are on board with the story that's being told, which is incredible. And that is kudos to Triple H and his creative staff and Rob Fee and everybody involved. That's kudos to Roman Reigns and the whole bloodline. That's kudos to Cody Rhodes. That's kudos to really everybody. That's kudos to the Judgment Day and Dominic. That's, everybody who is playing their role, and it's being done effectively. But it could be very interesting to go into the Royal Rumble with the realization that it isn't a given that Cody's going to win, and that Randy Orton might win, or The Rock might win. And also, when we talk about Cody finishing the story, well, who's to say it's with Roman Reigns? Here's the thing about Cody. Roman Reigns is not Cody Rhodes' archenemy. Roman Reigns is not the guy. Roman Reigns just happens to be the guy holding the title. If Cody Rhodes is Superman, and a lot of people think that he is, Roman Reigns is not Lex Luthor. There's 2 possibilities for Cody Rhodes' Lex Luthor, for Cody Rhodes' Joker to his Batman. Seth Rollins, and if you want to go all the way, if you want to make it a story of Cody's entire career, it's Randy Orton. Who's to say that we don't have a scenario where Cody needs to beat Randy Orton to finish the story? And that's the one guy that Cody can't beat, because that's the one guy that taught Cody everything that he knows. At the same time, Cody beating Seth Rollins to finish the story, and Seth Rollins being the one to beat Roman Reigns, makes complete narrative sense. Maybe we end up with a Brett Luger finish at the Royal Rumble, and we have to go to Perth, Australia, to the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, and that's where we get Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton, with the winner going to WrestleMania. And usually when a match like that is happening, right, where you go to the Elimination Chamber, or you go to the pay-per-view before WrestleMania, after the Royal Rumble, and there's a singles match where the winner gets to go to WrestleMania to face the champion, you kind of know who's going to win. It's pretty obvious what your main event for WrestleMania is going to be. I think you could get to Elimination Chamber in Perth with Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes being equally compelling stories going into WrestleMania 40. And quite frankly, equally popular characters going into WrestleMania 40. I would argue that Randy Orton's stock, in terms of popularity with the WWE Universe, was at an all-time high when he left the WWE 16 months ago, and has only increased while he's been gone. I think that should Randy come back, timing it to complicate the Roman Reigns #1 contender position going into WrestleMania could be a very, very effective thing. But I wouldn't want to talk too much about it, because you know rule number 3. We do not fantasy book Randy Orton. Well, at the same time, all these rumors of Randy Orton were running rampant. We got a lot of releases, and I hate talent release day for the WWE when these days come when mass releases happen. And it's happened before. It happened at the beginning of the pandemic. It happened a second time during the pandemic. It happened before that. It used to be a thing where it was like, I think I don't know, a few weeks after WrestleMania, they would always have a day where they would clean out the roster. And I think a couple of things. From an individual perspective, if throughout any of this process, you are taking any kind of joy in people losing their jobs, you've got to take a long look in the mirror. If you are rooting on anybody losing their gig, you have a lot of bad energy waiting to come back and hit you in the face. I mean, it makes you a bad person if you're rooting for somebody to lose their income, lose the way they pay for the roof over their head. And in a lot of scenarios, because this is WWE, lose their dream. This is a dream job that people have. You never want to root for somebody to lose that. And if you are, take a second to really think about what you're doing. And maybe you've gone too far into this world of internet wrestling fandom and you need to take a step back and be a person. Because we should be people every now and then. But from a bigger picture perspective, I do think that there are scenarios where these releases can be good things for a few of these people. I think that, especially in this round, it felt like the WWE was like, look, most of these releases are people that are making a good living, but we don't have any specific plans for them. And if there are people on this list who think that they have a lot to give to the industry, and a lot of people on this list do have a lot to give to the industry, and WWE is straight up saying, we've got no plans for you, to waste years sitting at home waiting for a phone call versus getting out there and realizing that the wrestling landscape is as big as it ever has been. There's multiple national promotions that are televised in the United States. There's WWE, there's AEW, there's Impact Wrestling. AEW has a secondary Ring of Honor promotion that is making room for people. The indies are healthy. There are organizations like GCW that are getting buzz. There are places like the Fight Network, the Premier Streaming Network, where people are getting eyeballs on stuff. The internet is doing everything that the internet is doing. New Japan is out there with eyeballs on the product. There are other places to go, plus the internet. People making a living on YouTube, people making a living doing podcasts. There are so many ways to contribute to the industry that if you're in a position where the organization paying you is saying, well, we're not going to do anything with you, you're not going to be contributing, and it is what it is, it could be the best thing to ever happen. So when we look at the releases, we had a handful of releases from NXT that hadn't done a ton on NXT yet. And I'm sure, I'm sure you'd have to ask the trainers and the people that go day to day. We would have no idea as to how a lot of those decisions were made. In terms of more familiar names from NXT, Quincy Elliott was released. Now, I, again, don't know anything about him. I probably met him once while I was down there. I think characters like Quincy Elliott are a big breath of fresh air in the WWE specifically. I think that there needs to be more characters like a Quincy Elliott. I think it's a really good thing for showing WWE and professional wrestling as a modern source of entertainment. But if Quincy Elliott's not, I don't know. I don't know why that decision was made. But I do think that as an entity, Quincy added a lot to the WWE product. Yulisa Leone, a lot of people were very high on her. Hopefully she will continue to do her thing. Ike Manjiro, who, of course, became very famous for wrestling in a blazer. I always thought he was very entertaining on NXT. I also wondered where he would fit in on the main roster. And I think that that's part of it. It's like, yeah, he's not doing anything wrong. He doesn't have to change a thing. Like, you're doing it all right. All that said, you look at Raw and SmackDown. You tell me where you fit in on the main roster. There's always room for comedic performers, but tell me where you fit in. because, you're going to be making X number of dollars on Raw or SmackDown. So, that was kind of the way I saw Icky Man. Shanky is no more. And I think that there were a couple of people on this list that there's a lot of big people in WWE right now. And the thing is, when you have Omos and you have Braun Strowman, you can't have big giants that aren't awesome. Like, say what you want about Braun Strowman. He's really good at wrestling. From the big man perspective. Runs around the ring, is a spectacle, is as big as a house. Omos makes every head turn in any arena that he's in. Beyond that, it's fun to have Shanky dancing, but unless Shanky wants to get, super jacked and just look like I think that at this point, in order to be a giant in the WWE, people have to believe that you can kick Braun Strowman's ass. Now, I think that there's a lot of room for Shanky because clearly he's a very talented entertainer. So I think that there's a lot of room for Shanky outside of WWE, but we'll see what he decides to do. Dabba-Kato the same way, Dabba-Kato had a few opportunities. Most recently as a somewhat regular on NXT, but before that what was his name? General Azim? I want to say Azim, when Apollo was doing the Nigerian gimmick. And then before that, I think he went as Dabba-Kato when he wasn't the bouncer. I think he was one of the big fighters on Raw Underground. I don't know. I think that he's got such a great look. Like if Dabba-Kato went to MLW, for example, and they just had him tear through everybody, you're watching MLW. I think that's where Dabba-Kato should be, in an MLW where he can be the dude that's just tearing everybody up. Then you get to the main roster. And, again, you look through most of these names. I think when companies go through a merger, they got to get their books right. And they have to be as profitable as humanly possible in that moment. And I think that they looked through a roster of talent and said, if you got people on here that you don't have immediate plans for, that are making good money, we got to get rid of them. Who knows? Maybe you bring them back. Remember when Triple H took over and some of these people he brought back, but he brought a ton of people back. I don't think the door is closed on, quite frankly, any of these people. And I don't look at anybody on this list and think they should be out of the business altogether. In fact, I could probably place most of them. If this person's not going to be in the WWE, this is where they should be. Just like I said with Dabba-Kato, MLW. Rick Boogs. Rick Boogs, of course, showed up on SmackDown after a short run in NXT, surprising a lot of people, but really rose to fame playing Shinsuke Nakamura's entrance. Nakamura! And then Pat McAfee would jump up on the table and air guitar along with Rick Boogs. People loved him. He got injured at WrestleMania 38. And then after, however long it took to get healed up, didn't do a ton. He was in the SummerSlam Battle Royal. I don't know. I think that Rick Boogs is just jacked like crazy. Has an incredible personality and is extremely charismatic. So I've got to believe that there's more for this guy to do. Rick Boogs is one of those guys that people who don't even watch wrestling are like, I don't know, there's something interesting about that guy. Mace, Massey, and Mansoir. Now, Mace first, because both these guys are incredibly talented. And just, I don't know, with every opportunity, you can't look at any opportunity, and they both got quite a few opportunities. But I can't place any opportunity that they didn't put their all into. I mean, Mace started, he was training at the PC, and then he was brought up to do color commentary. immediately. When Paul Heyman took over Monday Night Raw, the announce table, I believe, became Vic Joseph, Mace. He wasn't going by Mace at that. He was like whatever he was going by at the time. And Jerry Lawler. And it just, Vic hadn't done main roster stuff. So now he's got to start carrying people through stuff. Jerry Lawler is doing stuff the way he did it years ago. And poor Brennan, Mace Brennan, had never done commentary. So he's learning as he goes. He's doing everything that he possibly can, but ultimately gets F5 through a table and gets sent on his merry way. I don't know anybody that could have excelled in the position that Mace was in there. Then he comes back and gets another shot, so to speak, as a member of Retribution. Retribution, which will go down in the WrestleCrap Hall of Fame for just among the worst factions that's ever existed. And it has nothing to do with the participants, right? When you look at it, it's like Mace, it's Dijak, Ali, Mia Yim, like incredibly talented people, all brought together, but in a way that made no sense, with no purpose, that went absolutely nowhere. There was nothing that anybody in Retribution could have done more to make that work. And then for his third time, he's Maximum Male Models. And from the beginning, people are hard on Maximum Male Models. Number one, because they're Maximum Male Models. Number two, because people don't like that LA Knight was made to portray Max Dupree. And that gimmick gets associated with miscasting LA Knight. It's not even about the male models anymore. First of all, that's this gimmick that they do very entertaining vignettes, very entertaining promos, but once they're in the ring, what is it? How does this work? There's no way to make it work. So Max Dupree gets cut and he comes back as LA Knight as if it never happened. Maxine Dupree just goes like, yeah, you guys are great, but I'm going to hang out with Otis. He's better than you. No grudge, no rivalry, no nothing. It's just peace. And then the Maximum Male Models are just left completely unrepresented. And we get to the place we're at now. Can you say that Mace has the ability to succeed? He hasn't been given the opportunity to. And you could say the same thing about Mansoor. Like Mansoor, of course, I think became most famous for winning big matches at Saudi shows. Out of nowhere, he would just show up, which is really tough for anybody that watches week to week to be like, oh, he just beat Cesaro. Oh, he just won the Battle Royal. No gimmick. He's never on TV in America. Boom. I got to host a pre-show with him for NXT. That was the show that everybody booed everything that I said. Everybody cheered everything that he said. He did fantastic, by the way, on that pre-show. He was a natural. It was easy doing it with him. And that's not easy for everybody. So I was very impressed with his abilities doing that. But, again, it's like you're the guy who wins at the Saudi pay-per-views. And then we're going to put you on this pre-show. And now you're a Maximum Male Model. The dude got jacked. He got his shoulders all big. He looks awesome. They're also young. They've got a big Twitch following. They're in touch with the sort of digital age. There's a place for them, dude. There's no way there's not. I don't know if it means going to New Japan. I don't know if it means it's kind of like it's not that far off from when 2.0 ended up going to AEW and finding their own spot. Hopefully they're able to find a spot where they can really sort of push their creativity out there. Dana Brooke was a surprise. Dana Brooke is somebody who obviously has been in the WWE for a very long time at this point, came in with very little experience, or none maybe, and had to learn as she went. And I will tell you, while she doesn't have the big match or title accolades that some do, very few, I think, put the work in that Dana Brooke did. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that would tell you that Dana Brooke is not as hard a worker as you'll ever meet. And so I hope that she continues on this wrestling journey. I think it's very difficult to come from outside of wrestling entirely, get the WWE deal, and then now what do you do after WWE, right? Now you have to figure out what the indies look like. When Brian Myers was in, he was talking about that a little bit, about how he really didn't spend a lot of time on the indies before he got signed the first time. And when he got released, it was like, oh, this is what it's like. And I hope somebody like Dana Brooke gets that experience. Top Dollar. This one is odd because the other Hit Row people are not on the list. I don't know what's going on with Ashanti Adonis or Babs Bunny. I don't know. I don't know what's going on with the rest of Hit Row, but Top Dollar specifically is on this list. And you know, Top Dollar did the show during his last release. The whole Hit Row faction was one of those groups that was brought in after they were released, before Triple H took over. When Triple H got power back, he brought back Hit Row. And yeah, I mean, they ended up turning heel. They were, you know, Hit Row's been treading water, and that's not Hit Row's fault. It just is what it is. Top Dollar, of course, has experience not only wrestling. He's a football player, television host, and WWE superstar. So it'll be interesting to see where he takes his talents going forward. Aaliyah, somebody who WWE had definitely put a lot of long-term investment into. Breaking Ground was a show that was on, I don't even know what year at this point, years and years ago, towards the beginning of the WWE Network. This is like Bayley and Carmella and Baron Corbin, all kind of starting out and going through the NXT system. And Aaliyah was one of those people that was kind of searching for a gimmick and working with William Regal and doing all this stuff. And she never really became much of a force on NXT television. And after like 10 years or something, finally made it to the main roster. But yeah, I mean, I feel like even after she was brought to the main roster, I can't tell you that a trigger was ever pulled on her. So maybe it just, you know, it just didn't work out. And now was the time to fish or cut bait. Emma, I don't understand why she was brought back at all. You know, it's weird to me when people are brought back without a plan. Like if you're going to bring somebody back, have a reason to bring them back. Emma returned, but never really had a story to go with her return. So the fact that she's released now is like, okay, well, I guess I'm glad she made some money while she was gone. And then her, I think, fiance at this point, Riddick Moss, who, by the way, was part of our last live show. Riddick Moss is one of the people that I look at on this list with the most potential. I was very impressed with the interview that we did at the House of Comedy in Detroit right before SummerSlam. But I was already impressed with him, the way he was able to pull off and commit all the way to that Madcap Moss character, the way that he's able to work with power and speed. I mean, he's a freak athlete. And yeah, I mean, I think Riddick Moss, if they don't really use like guys like that in AEW, but I think Riddick Moss coming in and being almost like a Batista type in AEW could be really, really good for that promotion. I think he could really come across like a superstar if he was built to be a superstar in AEW. Elias released, who hadn't been on TV in a while. There were some rumors about whether his contract had expired actually a week or two ago, whether he was released in this batch. And, you know, who knows? He had amazing segments. WrestleMania, Undertaker, John Cena. He got one of the great boos ever, insulting a sports team. He, of course, portrayed Ezekiel, which in the beginning was just atrocious, but then very, very quickly got so hilarious that even it got over. But then ever since he returned, you know, it's a shame, but it's not shocking if they're going to release people that he's on this list. Shelton Benjamin, who I think was brought back when they redid the roster split, when they brought back like Kurt Hawkins and guys like that. Yeah, that's a shame. I feel like Shelton would have a lot to offer just in terms of his brain. I mean, in terms of everything that he's been through and his abilities. You know, this is a guy who Brock Lesnar respects for his ability as a wrestler. So hopefully, I mean, I don't know. I don't know what his ability would be like as a producer or as a trainer type person, but that's another thing that AEW might be able to use. And then the final three are probably the biggest shocks, biggest deals, but I don't know how to say it. But Mustafa Ali being released. Now, there were rumors a while back that Ali had asked for his release and it wasn't granted. This is an odd one to me, mainly because he had a pay-per-view match booked for next weekend, this coming weekend, Saturday. NXT No Mercy. He's in the North American Championship match with Dominic Mysterio. On Tuesday, he was, working an angle about why anybody would have a shot at the title before he did. And then on Wednesday, he was released. It's very odd to me. I mean, and maybe they just wanted to do it all on the same day. It's very odd that they wouldn't kind of go all the way with this, that they wouldn't maybe wait till the pay-per-view and then release him if they're going to do it, or even if there was an inkling that they might release him, why have this story going on? I don't know. That was a shock. I think Matt Riddle is a shame. I think that he's probably on this list, not because he wasn't being used, but because there seemed to constantly be controversy around him. As a performer, I think Matt Riddle's awesome. As a person, every interaction I've ever had with that dude has been really great. He treated me very well. Even at times when he didn't necessarily have to, he went out of his way to treat me well. So I always hate and kind of cringe when there are stories associating his name with controversy or behaviors unbecoming. But when you're when you're mid merger and there's new management afoot, it's a bad time to be making waves. That's what they always say. And boy, I mean, you talk about a guy who portrayed a Spicoli-like character. Boy, did he make a mean wave. And then finally, Dolph Ziggler, who this is like AEW, scoop him up immediately. I guess he hadn't been on TV for a while, but somebody put out like a fact sheet. Dolph Ziggler did like 19 years or something with WWE, held every title, a part of major storylines. Go back to the live gig we did WrestleMania weekend at the Comedy Store. And the way Dolph talks about, because he pretends he doesn't like wrestling, right? But the way Dolph talks about the angle that he and Otis had going into WrestleMania 36 that was kind of put the kibosh on because of the pandemic. Listen to the way that he talks about that angle. And you can hear how much passion is in that body for the art of professional wrestling. Yeah, I mean, I think if I'm AEW, I'm signing up Dolph Ziggler immediately. I'm grabbing Riddick Moss immediately. Let's say I can get 3. I'm going to get Dolph, Riddick Moss, and for my third one, can't get Mace. I'd probably go Dolph, Riddick Moss, and then I'd go Mace and Mansoor as a team. And that's because those are Riddick Moss, Mace, and Mansoor. You can completely remold as new characters. And Dolph is just like, you could finally let him grow to the potential that in 19 years he never got to grow to. So yeah, I mean, best of luck to all those people. We obviously hope to see them all in a wrestling ring soon, and if they are, let's make a point to support them. WWE at the same time, same day actually, announcing a new TV deal, Smackdown, leaving Fox a year from now. So this is October 2024. All this is going to take place. So we've still got SmackDown on Fox for another year. But then in October 2024, SmackDown is moving back to the USA Network. We don't know yet what time what time or day SmackDown will be on. Doesn't necessarily have to happen on Friday. Could go back to being on Tuesdays. Who knows? Depends on USA's preference and schedule. There may be a better night than Friday. Friday is not traditionally the best night in the world for television. There are rumors, they didn't say how much they paid, but there are rumors that while the deal that they made with Fox 5 years ago was worth $1 billion, that this could be worth as much as $1.4 billion, which is a 40% increase over the course of 5 years, which is absolutely incredible. Also, at the same time, same day this came out, Hulu rights are expected to expire soon, which makes sense, you know. But there are a couple of very interesting things here. Number one, and this is specifically noted, there's no word on where Monday Night Raw is going, right? So that's another deal. NBC Universal, owner of USA Network, did not sign up all of WWE's programming. They're just getting SmackDown. Raw could be moving off of USA, and USA is still trying to make sure that they have some kind of WWE representation by keeping SmackDown. That's very possible. Where could Raw be going? Could it be going to a network? Sure. Could it be going to a streamer? Sure. Could we see Monday Night Raw on ESPN Plus? Sure. Could we see Monday Night Raw on Amazon Prime? I watch football on Amazon every Thursday. Who's to say I won't be watching Raw every Monday on Amazon Prime? Sure. Netflix isn't quite there yet, but maybe they realize they need to be there. Maybe Monday Night Raw goes to Netflix. I think that's a little bit more of a jump. But I would be the fact that they paid that much for SmackDown would lead me to believe that they may not be secure that they are going to get Raw. And I would bet, if I had to just guess, that Raw could very well end up on a streamer. And that maybe Monday Night Raw goes to either Amazon or ESPN Plus. It could go to ESPN straight up, right? But, you know, with WWE now in bed with Pat McAfee, ESPN, connections are built in. Monday Night Raw could be on ESPN. Although I don't know that they'd want to give up football coverage on a Monday night. I also don't know if ESPN's audience would love professional wrestling being on the platform. So I think there's probably a better chance that it ends up on ESPN Plus. But stranger things have happened. So that's what I'm looking at. However, also, you wonder if the fact that they paid $1.4 billion to have, theoretically, to have SmackDown on USA is part of this also that they want to make sure that they have a foot in the door so that they can keep WWE on Peacock. Because that's another thing that's up in like 5 years. Not 5 years from now. It was a 5-year deal when it first happened. So within the next year or so, we find out where the new home of the WWE network is. If Peacock wants to have it, they're going to have to pay more than $1 billion, which is what they paid last time. WWE, I'm sure, still has the infrastructure to do it themselves if they wanted to, but more likely, maybe ESPN Plus announces that Monday Night Raw will be live on ESPN Plus, as will the entire WWE network, which means all the pay-per-views go over to ESPN Plus, which means if that does happen, we could very well end up seeing what the UFC's deal is, which is you have to subscribe to ESPN Plus and then you pay for the pay-per-views. So ESPN Plus is whatever it is, $6 a month. You pay your $6 a month, you're on ESPN Plus. Now you have the option of paying $70, $80, whatever it is, for a UFC pay-per-view. If Endeavor has seen that that is a system that works, I would not be at all surprised if price tags start getting added to WWE pay-per-views. All that said, that's all wild speculation, which is one of the things that we do on this show. But what is confirmed is that 4 NBC primetime specials are a part of this deal. That along with SmackDown going to USA, starting in October 2024, every year we're going to get 4 NBC primetime specials, which is what Saturday night's main event was. I think that this is where WWE needs to flex and flex hard. WWE is in a very unique position right now, and who knows how long they'll be there. But WWE is in a very unique position because technically they don't sell pay-per-views anymore. They sell catalogs, they sell rights, but WWE does not sell pay-per-views anymore. WWE used to be a company that sold pay-per-views, which means the very best matches had to be on pay-per-view because they needed to make sure that every month you were willing to give up $30 so that you could buy one of these pay-per-views. That's not the case anymore. That's not really their problem. They've already made their money. Pay-per-views are never going to be bad because it reflects the entire product, but also, I think that this is an opportunity for WWE. When you look back at some of the highest rated shows in wrestling history, you go back to Saturday Night's Main Event. The Saturday Night's Main Event that had the tag match where Hogan lost the title. Or it wasn't a tag match. It was Hogan versus Andre. Hogan versus Andre, Saturday Night's Main Event, where Andre then gives the title to Ted DiBiase and they do the angle with the referees, is one of the highest rated television shows in the history of professional wrestling. I think that NBC is the most famous network on television, without a doubt. If you've got an 8 p.m. NBC time slot, whether that's on Thursday, Friday, or probably most likely Saturday, how many people can you get to watch that? If I'm WWE, I'm going, let's go all out. Let's go WrestleMania style cards. Let's have giant matches for free on NBC. Maybe even if it's not all 4 times a year. Maybe you do this twice a year. You got 4 slots. Maybe one of the 4 you premiere a documentary in, right? Maybe the WrestleMania time or whatever, you go premiering on NBC the Cody Rhodes documentary. And then in the spring or the summer, you go, hey, we're going all out. We're going to have one of the biggest WWE cards ever on NBC. The whole world's tuning in. If twice a year you can get several million people to turn on NBC, you're reminding the world how valuable your product is. I'm not saying do 4 mega shows a year for NBC, but I'm saying at least give them 2. And then 5 years from now, when it comes time to renegotiate, we just made that $1.4 billion too. Just a thought. Over on AEW television, bad luck. Jon Moxley had to drop the International Championship to Phoenix mid-match. It was, if you were watching it, it was very odd the way it all went down. And it didn't seem like, first of all, when I watched, I said, something's got to be wrong here because Phoenix, number one, should not have just won that title. Moxley just won that. They just elevated that championship. They did it on pay-per-view. And to have Mox just lose it a couple of weeks later to Phoenix makes no sense. Also, I cringed when Mox landed on his head during especially that second pile driver, Phoenix's finish. Now, what I didn't realize until I went back was that, yes, indeed, Mox did get hurt. And yes, indeed, the finish was changed. But apparently, Mox did not get hurt in the pile driver. Mox got hurt earlier in the match during the dive. Mox hit his head when Phoenix dove off the ramp. And they kept going. But at some point during the match, Mox realized, I'm going to be out after this match for a while. So we got to switch the title. At which point he laid down. And that's why there's a very funny clip going on around where after the first finisher, Mox, the referee only counted to 2 and stopped. And Mox cursed him out. He said the F you to the referee. And then Phoenix had to do the finish again. The referee counted 3. Phoenix is the international champion. I mean, this is definitely a lemonade out of lemons scenario for AEW. I think it's a terrible thing that happened. I mean, I think WWE's got the right idea outlawing pile drivers anyway, but it is important to note that the pile driver apparently was not what injured Mox. I think the only thing that you can do coming out of this is just have killer Phoenix matches. Just make that title about how awesome Phoenix matches are with that title. I think you've got to give Phoenix a run with that title. I think you leave that title on Phoenix until Mox comes back. And then Mox can beat Phoenix for it and keep it moving. But between now and Mox coming back, I think that Phoenix just needs to have killer matches. All that said, I also think that there is a problem in AEW where a lot of guys don't wrestle like they wrestle every week. A lot of guys wrestle every week like they wrestle every 3 months. And it's like, this is why injuries happen. You can't consistently do this. Like, you can't wrestle like this week in, week out. It's okay to like leave it all in the ring once a quarter. But every single week, you're going to get hurt and you're going to miss key moments because you're wrestling in a television match that doesn't really matter, as if it was the end all be all. Just something I feel like I'm noticing, and maybe I'm off. Let's get into some news and notes here. A lot of very important news and notes throughout the world of professional wrestling. First of all, it does seem like the LA Knight John Cena tag team that I've been advocating for a long time. I've been advocating for this LA Knight John Cena tag team since John Cena came back. With John Cena as the referee, I said the way to get LA Knight over is to tag Cena with LA Knight. I wanted to see, and you could go back 3 weeks, LA Knight and John Cena versus Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa was the match I wanted before this story even started. It sounds like we were supposed to get there, except unfortunately, LA Knight tested positive for COVID and was sent home. It sounds like originally the plan was that AJ Styles got carted off so that LA Knight could come help John Cena at the end of that contract signing. But they had to adjust on the fly. This is what the rumors are, because LA Knight had to go home because of COVID. I don't know if that's true or not. These are just what the rumors are. I do hope that that's the plan, that this is about LA Knight and John Cena as a team, and then AJ's going to come back onto the scene to beat up the Bloodline, and then Roman's going to come back, and it leads to AJ versus Roman Reigns. But in the meantime, I do feel like John Cena and LA Knight as a tag team is probably the most valuable thing. And maybe John Cena heard my podcast. Maybe John Cena was listening to Notsam Wrestling because he had such a good time when I interviewed him and was like, oh yeah, I should be teaming with LA Knight instead of AJ Styles. Hey, Trips, give me LA. And Trips went, yeah. So hopefully LA Knight recovers quickly from COVID and he can get back to it. Hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully he can pop negative early this week and get to Smackdown on Friday so that we can build up and get to a pay-per-view. I think it's the week after next, isn't it? I think so. Speaking of AEW and good stuff happening on TV, if you haven't yet, do yourself a favor. If you're a Christian fan, and I think most people at this point are Christian fans. If you're a wrestling fan, I think you're a fan of Christian. Check out what Christian is doing on AEW television. He is doing some of the best work of his career right now. The stuff that he's doing with Luchasaurus, the promos that he's cutting, the fact that his gimmick is that he makes very inappropriate comments about people that have lost their fathers. Everything about Christian right now, to me, is hitting on all cylinders. He sneakily won the TNT Championship in a triple threat against Darby and Luchasaurus on Collision. Check out Christian right now. My 2 recommendations of the week: everything Christian is doing in AEW right now, and the show Wrestlers on Netflix. I think if we've ever had a spiritual successor to the first season of Tough Enough, it's Wrestlers on Netflix. I think the first season of Tough Enough is like excellent television. Wrestlers is so good. And you don't even have to be a wrestling fan. If you've got somebody in your household, you've got a spouse, significant other that is not a wrestling fan, put on Wrestlers because I bet they'll enjoy it. It's just such a well-told show. There's such a great narrative in it. And it really does capture the real life of wrestling without it being like sort of seedy and dark-sidey. Just like, this is the weird world of professional wrestling. I'm loving it. I think that if you haven't seen it yet, you'll love it. And I think even if you got people in your life that don't like wrestling, I think that they'll love it too. Speaking of loving it, I hope I love some of these emails. And I hope it's not an email folder full of questions and references to Randy Orton. But if you want to contribute to Not Sam Wrestling, if you want to be a part of our email segment every week, notsamwrestling@gmail.com. Notsamwrestling@gmail.com is our email address here at Not Sam Wrestling. And we will start with Austin. Sam, here's a crazy idea for WrestleMania. I'm already very skeptical. The fact that that's how you started makes me go, this is probably going to suck. Here's a crazy idea for WrestleMania. If we have all the players involved, let's say CM... Okay. I'm trying not to be judgmental. Let's say CM Punk returns and beats Seth for the world title. Seth goes on to win the Royal Rumble, last eliminating Cody. Seth says he's choosing Roman. So at the Chamber, we get an Elimination Chamber match to see who faces Punk. Oh, yeah, I forgot he's the champion now. At Mania, Cody wins. So the next SmackDown, The Rock comes and challenges Roman at Mania. Now we have a challenger for both titles. And Seth comes up with this idea. On night one, there's a triple threat between Punk, Cody, and Seth for the world title. Also on night one is Roman versus Rock. The winners of these two matches face off on night two in a unification match. I think this idea makes it so you have no idea what will happen. There are several combinations, of course. But it also makes you go, why have we been watching any of this? So you're saying that in the entire run of the World Heavyweight Championship, we'll have two champions. It'll be Seth, it'll be Punk, and then the title just gets scooped into the WWE Championship. It almost makes you go, why did we ever have that title to exist if this is what we're doing with that title? Because it doesn't make any sense. Also, I already said last week, Roman versus Rock is, if it's going to happen, it is the main event. It is not a night one main event. It is not a match that leads to another match. It is the match. The headline of WrestleMania 40 is Roman Reigns versus The Rock. That's it. Not Roman Reigns versus The Rock. And how did it work now? Rock. And also your scenario is Seth already has said he chose Roman. So then The Rock comes out and he just goes, no, I'm going to get Roman. And they just go, okay. How does that happen? How does Seth not go, what the hell are you talking about? I won the Rumble. How do I not? I just told you I'm fine. He's already claimed. No. I'm going to tell you, Austin, you're probably an awesome guy. We could hang out anytime you want. But not if you're going to pitch me ideas like this. This makes no sense on any level. Let's see. Mount Rushmore from Kyle. What is your Mount Rushmore of wrestlers from the Ruthless Aggression era? I think most people would tell you what? Like Cena, Orton, Batista, Lesnar. But that's not it. Because Mount Rushmore is different things. It's not just four people. The Mount Rushmore for Ruthless Aggression, Cena's on there, but it's for the future. It would be Cena, Triple H, Edge, and Brock. Triple H, Edge, Brock, Cena. If you ask me right now, and I would probably go back to the drawing board and retool this. Rey Mysterio might actually be in there somewhere, maybe instead of Brock. But I think that's where I land right now. I could change that. If you have any opinions on it, leave it in the comments, write an email, whatever you want. Ultra Boy, what are your thoughts on the controversies around Dave Meltzer's star ratings for WWE? Who cares? Who cares? Do you agree with the notion that he's biased, or do you think it's more nuanced? What are your thoughts, Sam? Of course it's biased. It's Dave. If I give star ratings, it's biased. If you give star ratings, it's biased. It's based on your opinion. If a movie critic says, I give it 5 tubs of popcorn, it's biased. It's based on his opinion. If Dave Meltzer wants to tell people, how he ranks a match from 1 to 6 or 1 to 5 or whatever it is, that's fine. I think that the level of importance that it's given is nuts. I think that the fact that it's a point of conversation is nuts. But that's not Dave Meltzer's fault. I mean, if I came out and started just ranking matches from 1 to 5 and everybody was like, hey, congratulations, Triple H, you just got a Sam Roberts 5-star, he'd be within his rights to say, why would I care? Because Sam Roberts thinks that? Okay. I don't see what the difference is. But yeah, I mean, I'm interested in what Dave thinks about things because he's a guy who's been a big part of the business for a long time, written about it. Like, I like that it exists, but I'm not offended. And I certainly don't think he has a duty to, make sure that ratings are handed out equally. Well, how can this be an official thing if this person has more stars than that? It's not an official thing. It's a guy who wrote it. That's all it's ever been. Kanjay says, I mean, it's less official than even the PWI 500, and the PWI 500 isn't a thing. It's wrestling. Kanjay says, what is it with these Mount Rushmore questions? I might have to ban Mount Rushmore questions. What's your theme song, Mount Rushmore? Mine is Metalingus, No More Words, Kingdom, and Worlds Apart, with honorable mention to both Will Ospreay. What about you? Also, now that it has been a few weeks, do you now know what in wrestling that is loved that you hate? No, I don't know that. And I mean, I don't know. A Mount Rushmore for theme songs? Probably Hulk Hogan, Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, and Stone Cold, I guess. I don't know. What's the criteria? It's a crazy question. Indy, how's it going, mate? If Cena wins number 17, how would you like to see it play out? Also, which wrestler, current or retired, do you think has given the most back to the business? I think it's hard to see past Cena. No, Cena has given the most back to the business. 100%. I mean, that's what makes him the GOAT. People go, how is John Cena the GOAT? It's because you could argue that The Undertaker. It's either The Undertaker or John Cena in terms of giving back to the business. John Cena, because nobody has been less selfish with the top spot than John Cena. The Undertaker, because nobody has been less selfish with their own body or self-interest in general than The Undertaker. So maybe The Undertaker has given the most back to the business, with John Cena as a close second. If John Cena wins number 17, I think it'd be cool to see him win the World Heavyweight title and then lose the World Heavyweight title. I think that it would do wonders for the World Heavyweight title to see John Cena hold it up. And I think it would do wonders for whoever beat John Cena for the World Heavyweight title to see them beat John Cena for that. So yeah, that's how I would do it. I'd have John Cena, whether it's Seth, whether it's whoever beats Seth. It'd be fun to see it with Seth again. But to see John Cena beat Seth and then 2 months later Seth gets it back from Cena would be a pretty cool scenario for, I think, all parties. Nicholas, no rules will be broken in this email. I hope so. You can read peacefully till the end. Okay. So people talk about The Rock, but they don't realize the biggest thing upon us. Everybody knows that wild speculation is the strongest force in the universe. That's true. But when I watched the product, and I saw, Randy Orton at the Performance Center. I've already talked about it, Nicholas. Sean, Sam, I've been a fan of your podcast early on. I was a fan of the O&A show and was turned back into wrestling when Patrice mentioned the pipe bomb, and I think you were the only one who got the reference. I loved when Patrice brought up wrestling references. Of course, that led me to the O&A vid on YouTube reviewing the Shockmaster. Okay. I happened to mark out when Cody returned at WrestleMania 38 and was hoping he would have won at 39. That's perfect. You're a great fan. What about a scenario where The Rock starts throwing shade at Roman around Royal Rumble in town, building up for their showdown? Meanwhile, Cody wins the Rumble, eliminating Damian Priest last. This leads to the Raw after, with Cody saying he wants to talk about challenging Roman again, prompting him to come out to the ring. Priest comes out, says he never cashed in his briefcase. Said he wants to cash in, but at WrestleMania to bypass Cody. All of a sudden, Rock pops out. This is so convoluted already. Saying the world wants him on top. Wouldn't matter if the world wants him there or not. Sets up a tournament. So you're saying Cody? No, because you're just setting up another scenario where it's The Rock versus Roman Reigns for night one. So it's Cody versus Priest, and then Rock and Roman, and then Cody and... No. Because number one, why would Damian Priest give up his briefcase for a tournament? Damian Priest is not giving up his briefcase for a shot at the shot. His briefcase is for a shot. If that were the case, just cash the briefcase in the night after WrestleMania. So it would make no sense for Damian Priest. And I don't know how many times I got to tell you guys this. Rock and Roman is not happening on night one to lead to night two. It's not going to happen. Ever. It's not happening. Stop sending those suggestions. It's not. Thank you for being a longtime fan, Sean. Rock Roman is night two. And that's the Roman match. And that's the Rock match. No more. It's like I'm talking to my kids. Except I don't talk to them this severely because it would give them a complex. No more. Maybe my dog. Jay, what's the hap, Sam? Thank you. I have a question that I personally believe does not fall under the umbrella of fantasy booking. Randy Orton, if you feel otherwise, please feel free to disregard my question. With the legacy that Randy has built in his 20-plus year career, do you think the day comes for him to hang up the boots for good? Do you think you'd make a better coach in NXT or as a producer if you were inclined to do so? That's a good question, Jay. I think Randy would be a better main roster producer. I think Randy would be an awesome, finishing guy. I think that he is so incredibly smart. He's got such a great wrestling IQ that I think it would be better for really, really, really good guys to come to Randy and say, what do you think of this? And for Randy to just give him that little bit. I think Randy will end up being that detail guy that just goes what if you also did this? And it takes it from a 9 to an 11. Good question. Benji, could you give me a Mount Rushmore of the most iconic things ever said on commentary? No, Benji, I'm not going to do that. I mean, God is my witness is broken in half. Puppies, I don't know, what a maneuver. And how much does he weigh? Eric just started listening to the pod weekly about 2 months ago. Appreciate you. But I've always been a fan of yours. What are your thoughts on WWE dropping the new World Heavyweight Championship on a house show? Maybe not the first time Rollins loses, but the next. I'm not against it. Eventually. I think we got to get through a couple title changes first, but I think that'd be a great thing to do. I think title changes on house shows are super fun. And like I said, I think playing hot potato with that title would not be the worst thing in the world. And I think that, to answer your question, doing it at a house show would definitely bring interest to it. I think it's a good idea. Second question, loved your pod on the WWE merger. Thank you very much. It got me thinking with Endeavor, expanding its brand. Do you believe it makes sense if it bought the XFL because of its ties with The Rock and keeping him as CEO? No, I don't think so. So the XFL, it looks like the XFL and the USFL are going to merge. And I mean, I think that, WWE is already connected with The Rock. I think that if you want The Rock, you've got him. If you can figure out a way to make the XFL profitable, then sure, buy it up. But if you can't, I don't think the XFL IP right now is terribly valuable. So I don't see why Endeavor would buy it. Hi, Sam. This is from Dima. I'm sure you're busy. Bumping my previous. Okay. I've been following your channel since Wait for an iPhone for No Reason video. You're amazing. Thank you. You're making stunning content, but I noticed you're lacking on the short form video clips. Oh, is this a pitch? Oh, that's a pitch. That's not a podcast email. Now you know I'm not screening these things. Alec, if you were to book an invasion angle between WWE and AEW, who are the 5 you would book on a WWE team? Who would you book on an AEW team? Well, I already did a WWE versus AEW, fantasy Forbidden Door. But if you want to go 5-on-5, just off the top of my head, it's going to be Roman, Seth, Cody, Sammy, KO versus Kenny, Mox, MJF, and the Bucks. Let's see. David, or Davey, what a time to be a wrestling fan. We are spoiled. Yes, we are. I wanted to quick say we all know Dolph will be snatched up in no time by another company. I'm honestly thrilled to see him set free because I know wherever he goes next, he will undoubtedly shine like the amazing performer he is. I'm calling it right now. Dolph or blank will be the main event. Do you agree? I don't think Dolph Ziggler will be the top guy in AEW. I think that he will come in, he will go to the main event, and then he will be used to elevate people. But I do think that Dolph would be a great addition to AEW. I think that seeing Dolph and Bryan in an AEW ring, I think Dolph and Kenny, I think Dolph and Ricky Starks. Like I think there's a lot there. Let's see. This will be the last one. If for some reason, this is from Mike, we don't get Roman versus The Rock at WrestleMania, do you think we possibly could see Roman versus Stone Cold, Rock versus Stone Cold one more time? No, I don't think either of them would want to. I think they've got a pretty perfect trifecta of matches, minus the way the one finished. So yeah, no, minus the finish to WrestleMania 17. They got a pretty good trifecta of matches. I don't think we'll ever see Rock, because also Rock and Austin are very protective of their own legacies. And I'm sure that they want somebody in there that they know will be able to make them look good and protect them. The Rock was relying on John Cena. Austin was relying on Kevin Owens. It's difficult for them to rely on each other at this point. Neither one of them wrestle full time. So that's why I don't think it'll happen. I appreciate all you guys. Who email in. I'm sorry if I hurt your feelings. I'm very harsh, and there's nothing I can do about that. Thank you for listening every week. Don't forget to, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment, hit like, do the whole thing. If you're listening on Spotify, subscribe and leave a rating. If you're listening on Apple, subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review, and we'll see you later this week with Andy Williams, a.k.a. The Butcher.